Thank you for being patient with us. We're going to begin the meeting here, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Will the Secretary please call a roll?
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mrs. Coletti?
Here.
Mr. Heisel? Here. Mrs. Sanders?
Here.
Mrs. Stockton? Secretary here. Mr. Rose?
Here. Can we rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we do have some public comments that I've received. We've asked this evening to be on the agenda items only, and the 3 comments that I've gotten are related to that, and they are all relating to the same comments. So Mr. Michael Wader, Mr. James Beckwith, and Mrs. Rachel Stelfox, if you all want to come up and participate as a group or individually, how you want to do that. It's all in concerns about transportation issues for the early college program driving to Prairie State. So, and before you guys make a comment, Dr. Rogers would like to make a few comments too. So,
sure. I just want to say to the board that tonight I did put this on the agenda because I had received a few phone calls from the high school concerning an issue that I wanted to get some direction from the board tonight. I wasn't quite aware that parents were going to come, but that's fine because this is a public meeting, and I actually encouraged them to share their side of the story. Certainly they are well equipped enough to speak for themselves, but I would like to say from the superintendent what the issue seems to be is last year we started the Prairie State early college program, and we had about 50 some odd students in the program. It was a program where we bused students to Prairie State and returned them to the high school on a daily basis. This year we have had some official requests put into the principal, I believe, especially to see whether or not students could be allowed to drive to the school and back, meaning to Prairie State directly instead of taking a bus. I told Mr. Rigler that I needed to check with both our attorney and our insurance company because I wasn't going to make a decision on that just simply on my own. So we checked with our attorney and our insurance company, and I was prepared tonight to talk to the board about that, and we did look. It's something that we can discuss in closed session after we hear all the comments, and if the board chooses to, after that information, to direct me to have a decision to the parents, we can do that, or if they feel that there needs to be more investigation, they can do that also. But we will certainly respond to the parents, if not tonight, sometime this week, in writing or through Mr. Rigler as to the discussion that the board will have after I inform them of both what our attorney said about the matter as well as our insurance company. So the main thing that I want the parents, even before you speak, is we need to make sure that, as I know that you do, that our students are ultimately safe. And I understand if my child was in the program, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. It's nothing wrong with asking the question. It's nothing wrong with the desire. You just know and understand that in a very litigious world, where even if you quote-unquote sign waivers or whatever else, this is a world that we live in that you really do have to listen to what your attorneys are saying about legal matters, because this is a legal matter if a student gets into a car accident. That's the thing that we're very concerned about. And that we can't control, and you know that you can't control it. You know, unfortunately, if it happens, it could, no matter how safe of a driver somebody could be, somebody could get hurt, get seriously hurt, and if that happens, there is a certain amount of liability that is on the school district, no matter what a parent may say about, we promise not to sue you, or, you know, something of that nature. So those are all the things that we had to consider, and the board will have to consider in making that decision. But we're more than welcome to hear what you have to say tonight. And so with that said, I am going to turn it back over to our president.
Go ahead. You guys have the floor for your comments. Go ahead. Yeah, if you can use the mic.
Thank you, everyone. We decided, I think we've all got something a little different to say.
And that's
so
fine.
we're
You
gonna
know,
go
you guys
one
can
at a
each
time.
speak. That's fine.
I appreciate your comments, Dr. Rogers. But my comment is that as is right now, there is somewhat of a problem.
Sure.
And it seems like to me that with some flexibility for these kids that are, you know, I mean, responsible, you know, pretty good kids, that seems to be the easiest thing, at least to some of us, to solve the problem. So, but I guess just to be specific, somehow the logistics need to be worked out if flexibility on their part, on the kids' part for transportation can't be done, so that they're getting back here to school in time to do the things that they need to do here. They're required to take at least, you know, they take their last class of the day here, and you know, and not, this is coming through my son, so a student, but he at least believes, he's been told that he's got a certain amount of time at least that he's got to take for lunch as well. So if the transportation, the bus gets back here late, and he's got to take it, you know, he's being told he's got to take a certain amount of time for lunch, and then he's late for his class, that's not acceptable, you know, for us either. So so if the flexibility can't be worked out with them providing their own transportation, I would at least hope that we can work out the logistics, so that and I mean, just the little survey that we did here earlier with the kids, for example, I mean, Fridays seems to be the worst. They're done fairly early in the morning at Prairie State, but yet the bus doesn't leave Prairie State until 12:30, and it just seems like administratively it could leave maybe 15 minutes earlier. There's no kids that have conflicting classes or anything like that, and nobody's getting back here late, and they're all getting to their, you know, their lunch and their you know, sixth period on time.
Can I ask a question, whether it's you or one of the students? So the bus is, the difficulty here is getting back on time enough, at least one of the issues that you're bringing up, to be on time for the last class that they have to take, and yet still be able to take a lunch without either missing the lunch or having to, as they say, scarf their lunch down because they're here late.
Yes.
Is that, what time, whether you know or the students know, what time is the last period of the day again? So about 1:15 to 2:15, right? What time are the lunches being?
The lunch period we're in is 12:50 to 1:15.
12:50 to 1:15. So about a 25-minute lunch, right? And can I ask your name?
My name's Rachel.
Rachel. Oh, Rachel. Okay. Your mom is Diane Stelfox? Yes. Okay. Senior?
Yes.
So, Rachel, you're saying that the bus then doesn't get here all the time at 12:50. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, sometimes it'll be on time, and other times it'll be late. Like, it's like goes back and forth. Like, we don't leave on, like, we're really bad at leaving on time. Because there are kids that have a class and it ends at 12:45, and we're supposed to leave at 12:30. And so they have to get pulled out of their class early to catch the bus every Monday and Wednesday. And so, like, we feel bad because we're making these kids leave their, I think it's their math class, like 10, 15 minutes early to try and catch this bus to make it back on time for our lunch period.
Okay, so you're saying that the bus, or let me make sure I heard you right, that on Mondays and Wednesdays, that the bus leaves at 12:30 sometimes.
It's supposed, every day is supposed to leave at 12:30.
Right, but their class doesn't end until 12:45.
Yes, and so they have, like, I guess they
15.
get worked out where they're supposed to leave early.
Yes, I get it.
Like, they're trying to, like, get out of their class, but they're not always going to get out. Like, if they're learning something, they're not going to, like, rush out.
I get it.
Get out as best they can, but it doesn't always work out.
Okay. All right.
Another transportation issue that I'd just like to bring to your attention at least is, I mean, I believe it happened today. There was a half-day, I believe, here in the building. They obviously have to take their other classes. The procedure seems to be is that the bus leaves Prairie State and then goes on a very circuitous route, basically dropping off every student that's in the program at home until they come back to the high school, and then all the kids that drive to the high school in the morning then are still on the bus and get here. It seems like to me that it might be possible to come here first, drop the kids off who drove, and then go
And then
on
take 'em
the
home.
circuitous route.
Okay.
My last point here is, and I don't know if Rachel will mention it or not, but just in case, the kids do seem to be a little bit, or have a little bit of a feeling at least that they're not part of this body at all anymore.
Okay.
And I guess some of that's understandable.
Right.
Ms. Stelfox said they're getting the real reality of it now over the last couple of weeks. They're really realizing what they're missing not being here. But I mean, I think that's the trade-off that they made. But I mean, as far as if accommodations can at least be made for, I mean, tickets for events, football games, dances, permission slips, getting dean's signatures on slips for people that are, coming from other schools to the dance, and to really at least make sure that they still feel part of, this class and, this school. So.
Sure.
Very last comment.
Yes,
I
go
appreciate
ahead.
the program. This is a great program.
And I love it, too.
I've got 2 down at U of I right now. One just got out. I know what this is worth dollar-wise.
Yes.
Please don't. I'm not complaining about the program. I don't want to, kill the, goose that laid the golden egg. It's a great program, but I think we just need to work out some logistics.
And like I said, I take it in that spirit, and I really do appreciate you all coming. I'm not offended, and I don't believe the board is offended at all. Okay, so that's what this is about. All right. That was Mr. Waiter, right? All right. Jim?
Good evening. My name is Jim Beckwith.
Yes, sir.
My son Joshua is a senior at Crete Monee and a student in the program at Prairie State. My understanding is that we have 25 students this year that we have placed in this program. These are all high academically achieving students. They've shown social responsibility in the school, no behavior problems. All the parents, and I'm sure their teachers, and you would agree, they're all very mature for their age. They are taking college classes as seniors in high school. And like Mr. Waiter said, as a parent, I'm grateful for that program. The logistics, though, of this program, I don't think were well thought out this year. I don't know if it's because there are fewer students, if someone new was in charge this year. If I were a student at this point, I would be contemplating asking to be released from the program and put back in the regular school. And I quizzed all the kids here tonight, and I was amazed at the additional information that I learned. On Friday, between their class at Prairie State and their class here at Crete Monee, they are in class for 105 minutes, so let's just call it an hour and a half. Their school day is 7 hours. It begins at 7:20 and ends at 2:15 for a 50-minute class at Prairie State and a 55-minute class here. They get to Prairie State at 7:45 for a class that begins at 9 a.m. Their class is over at 9:50. The bus leaves Prairie State at 12:30. We're worried about liability and responsibility, et cetera, but we're leaving 25 high school students with nothing to do for 3.5 hours on a Friday. They don't have that much homework, and they just sit there. And I understand the alternative last year was they could come here and sit. The kids refer to it as the babysitting service, and both those are unacceptable to me as a parent, just sitting doing nothing. If we're going to give them this opportunity, go the whole 9 yards. These are good kids. Depending on their schedule, because they're all in different classes, they either get out at 12:15 and go to the bus at 12:30, or they get out at 10:15, I think it is, or 10:30, and they have an hour and a half, 2-hour wait. They were driving, and I guess that's what created the issue. The students were called on and said, no, you can't drive, you have to take the bus. They were driving and getting to their class here on time every single day. So tardiness is not an issue with them driving. They all have insurance. They've all been entrusted to drive by their parents. I really don't believe it is a liability issue per se for the school district if they're not transporting other students. In fact, if you want it, the state of Vermont actually has a form for their high schools to use for students in this situation when they're driving to work-based learning opportunities, job shadowing opportunities, et cetera, that the parents and students sign with a set criteria of rules and releasing the school district of liability.
And Jim, can you leave that with us, please?
I also work at Thornton Township School District 205. We have several programs that involve students leaving Thornridge High School and Thornwood High School in the morning, going to Thornton High School for several special programs we run there through Navistar and Advanced Culinary Arts, et cetera, and then returning to Thornwood and Thornridge in the afternoon, their home school. We allow our juniors and seniors to drive. They do not have to take the bus. We also have students leaving Thornton High School to go to off-site programs like through MyJack, et cetera, and that is their only transportation. They must have a car available to them because they're all at different sites and we don't have a bus running. They drive themselves, and at the end of the day, they either come back to school for extracurricular activities or they go home. So there are other school districts that have similar programs and have students driving. One of the other logistical problems that I just can't believe this, but if the students miss the bus, they're told, don't go to Prairie State, come here and sit all day. That seems backwards.
Can you repeat that again?
If the students miss their Prairie State bus
Okay.
and can't get there, they're told to sit here all day and not drive to Prairie State.
Okay.
That just seems wrong.
All
That-
right.
Sit here and do nothing for 5.5, 6 hours and miss your college classes instead of driving yourself because you have a car or your parent driving you, et cetera. So I'm just asking that you relook at the logistics. It's a good program, but this downtime really has the kids frustrated. And I don't want to see the program go away because kids don't want to do it in future years because they hear, our current kids complaining, you have 3 hours of downtime, 5 hours of downtime. Let's fix the logistic problems. Let's trust them. They're 17, 18 years old, and see if we can work this out for them.
Sure.
Thank you.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, I have a question. Is it Mr. Douglas?
Beckwith.
Beckwith, I'm sorry. When you say the students are told not to drive, who's telling the students this?
I guess that is part of the policy or procedures for this program for the students. That if they miss the bus, they are not to drive to Prairie State or simply to come to Crete Monee all day. That's school rule or policy or direction. I don't know if it came from the principal or the program administrator. I couldn't tell you that. The kids, Rachel might be able to tell you that. I don't know.
Right.
I'll put that on Rachel's shoulders.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Rachel Stelfox. I'm a senior here, and I'm involved in this program, and I'm pretty much representing all the kids and stuff. I guess we just have a problem because, this whole program is supposed to be about responsibility and how we are the responsible kids, and then we get a little bit of leeway for responsibility, but then all of a sudden it gets roped back in, and we just think that to get into this program we had to take tests, we had to have a good record. This is the top % of our school. These are the top kids, and we think that we should get a little credit for that, and that we can be responsible and take care of ourselves and get to school on time, because that's what we've been doing for our whole lives. We're the kids that don't have tardies, that don't have detentions. We have been doing this, and we're used to it. This is normal for us. And I guess they pointed out the whole thing about missing the bus, how that we're not by any means supposed to drive. No matter because everybody wakes up late and stuff. It happens. People are normal. And I'm not saying that we should use an excuse to drive oh, I woke up late every day. But it does happen once in a while. And to be told that we should just not drive even if we wake up late, I think that's a little crazy, just because we want to be at class. We don't want to miss class. We don't want to get bad grades, because at college, your grade depends on your attendance, not just your grades in class. So if we wake up late, we don't want that to affect our grade. And I'm also involved in the bowling team, and we have to drive to practice every day. we don't have a bus, there's no waiver, we have to drive to meets, we have to drive to practice. And we're, like, it's our liability, I guess. Like, and I feel like it's kind of the same route because it's still a school function, so it's still supported by the school, and they would still have the liability as they would because it's all like a school function pretty much. And so I don't understand, like, I guess we don't understand, like, why it wouldn't be viewed as the same thing because you're trusting us, like me and all my teammates, to drive to practice, to drive to meets, which, I mean, aren't always close, but you won't let us drive to Prairie State, which isn't that far away, and it's like the same responsibility. And I guess we also have a problem with the fact that we have to pull kids out of class early. Like, I think that's a little crazy just for everybody to ride the bus. Like, these kids are in a math class. It's not like a easy egg class like math. It's important. And they're saying that they have to get pulled out of class like 10, 15 minutes early, which, I mean, you learn a lot in 10, 15 minutes. Like, that's the end of a lecture. That's how you're closing, like, how you solve the problems and everything. Like, missing that, like, that's 10, 15 minutes a day, and then multiply that by 5 days a week. Like, that's a lot of time you're missing in your math class. And then when they get on the bus, they're irritated, which I would be too. Like, if I got pulled out of my class 10, 15 minutes early to make a bus when I could just drive, like, I would be a little bit irritated. And we don't blame them. We also feel bad. But there's nothing we can do because it's either take them out of class early or miss part of lunch and then miss part of, like, our classes at the end of the day, which are either, like, the honors engineering class or, like, AP classes that we don't want to miss. Like, we don't want to miss 20 minutes of that class either because that's our grade at Crete. Like, I feel like it's just kind of like a lose-lose situation. Like, we don't want to take them out of class, but we also don't want to be penalized and taken out of our class when we come back here.
Okay. I get it. All right. I think we get it. And you did a nice job, Rachel.
Thanks.
All right. I just want to say this, one thing to all of the students and parents that are out there, because I don't want you to get the wrong impression by no means about how the process has gone. By no means, had anyone, made a decision. It's just simply that the policy, if you want to call it that, or the procedure, and actually I'm just going to say the practice, because honestly, when we looked at what have we written about the program, it wasn't addressed in writing, but it was the practice last year. It was the assumption, based on how it was constructed, that we would be the ones transporting the students there and back. And so when the question came up, it wasn't something that we could answer right away because of the magnitude of what was involved. And Rachel, directly to your comment, understanding about the bowling team or whatever athletic teams, it's just a little bit different only because of some things that are already written in athletics. So this was new, and I told Mr. Rigler, I said, we can't make this decision right away. I know they want an answer, but we can't make the decision until we do contact. As I said, we had to, check with our attorney. We had to check with our insurance company. And then last of all, we had to check with the Board of Education. And they just can't meet, at the drop of a hat. So we did put it on the agenda the next time that they have met. We are allowed, based on the legalities that are involved, to be able to discuss this briefly in closed session, which we will. And all I'm going to tell them is basically what our attorney and our insurance company said, and then they will direct me as to how they want to resolve this issue. So we're not fighting each other. I want you to understand that very clearly. We truly understand what you're saying, and we respect what you're saying. It's just that there's a process, and I did not feel I could make this decision by myself because children are at stake, and if something happens to any of you, I don't want to be in a lot of hot water because I decided to make a decision on my own. So I think that you can understand that and hopefully appreciate that. The only other thing I want to ask is, those of you who are students, can you stand up just real quick? Do you find the program to be of benefit, though, to you this year? Okay. All right. Well, that's a good thing. So unless there's any other comments, then, like I said, you can be seated. Thanks a lot. And we will discuss it, I think, on the next agenda point is closed session, unless there's someone else who needs to say something.
No? Well, based on some of the comments there and stuff, we are able to go into the need for a closed session in order to discuss security procedures and the use of personnel and equipment because of the potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, based on Section 8 of the Illinois School Code that we've got right here. So based on that, we do have a need to go to closed. Do I have a motion to go to closed?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel,
Second.
second by Mrs. Coletti. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. We are enclosed. We will return very shortly. comments from George and Crete, so we're
All
just
right,
going to
so
table
good.
that.
Good.
And then, so you just got that one thing, and then going into
Academic
updates.
report, okay.
Do you want to make a comment about that while they're all here?
Oh, yeah, when you,
Or wait until the end?
no, I don't want to keep them waiting. Just when you bring us back into session, you can say that.
Okay, everybody here? All right, I'd like to get a motion to come out of closed.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel, second by Mrs. Coletti. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, none. We are out of closed. I think Dr. Rogers would like to say a couple comments here in regards to what we just talked about in closed.
Sure. In relation to the comments that were made tonight, especially to our students, and I think our one parent that's left out of the crew. I know there's other parents in the audience, but I just want to tell you how much, again, all of us should appreciate the democratic process. That's why our country is as great as it is. And our attorney, I will tell you this, his original recommendation, obviously because he is an attorney, is to reduce your liability by as much as possible. And his personal recommendation was to not allow students to drive, but he did say you can allow them to drive if you want to, as long as you do it under certain conditions. And so, again, to keep your liability at a minimum. So the board heard what those conditions were. I'll talk just a couple of them. But the decision of the Board of Education has directed me to allow students to drive to Prairie State College. What we're going to ask, and yeah, you can clap. What we're going to ask, though, is that you will be patient with us because our attorney is going to be the one to draft a consent form that parents will have to sign. Some of the things that he stated obviously has to be presented as evidence is, one, a valid driver's license, to a valid registration of the vehicle, to proper insurance. And that is where it's going to get a little detailed, because again, it's probably going to be a situation where you're going to have comprehensive insurance, not just liability. Another one is, under no circumstances, unless it is someone who lives in the household, maybe such as a sibling, can you transport another student to Prairie State College. So you can't drive friends, girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever else, or just a friend, period. You can't do that. Even if the other parent gives you permission, that will be one of the requirements. And there's going to be some issues either about discipline in the sense of, if you take advantage of it in a sense that is wrong, like you should be back at school or you should be at Prairie State and you're at the mall, or as Rachel talked about tonight, being responsible. If you're not responsible, then it could jeopardize, one, either your driving privileges or actually jeopardize you being in the program. So those are the kinds of things that will be in there. We think our lawyer serves many different clients, so it may take about a week for us to get this together. But future communication will be given to you through Mr. Rigler. And once the form is completed, he will either call you together as a group, or he'll work out the logistics, and we'll send the copy of the form to the board. They don't really need to approve it anymore. The other thing that they made very clear to me is that this form should be presented to any student who is driving for any reason for district activities. So whether it's athletics, work-study programs, or whatever, we need to have this type of form in place for all students who drive, not just the Prairie State College students. So with that said, that's the decision of the board. You will be able to drive, but we need you to ride the bus for at least another week. Fair enough? Okay. You're welcome.
Be careful.
Be careful now.
Thank everybody for their comments. It makes a world of difference for us to hear, everybody's opinions out there. So, we thank you for enlightening us on some of the issues that we need to talk about. So we'll move forward then with some of the business that we needed to take care of. First item that we have in the action reports is approval to pay P.T. Farrell for Will Center Road construction. So I need a motion in order to make payment to P.T. Farrell in regards to the Will Center Road construction project. Moved by Mr. Heisel.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Coletti. Bob, you have any comments, or board members, any comments?
This is related to the construction of Will Center Road that we did this summer. The road was completed in the summer, and the application for payment has now been submitted. The application for payment was reviewed by our architects and our attorneys. Everything's in order, so it's time to pay the vendor, or P.T. Farrow, who completed construction of the road. So the amount currently due, so the amount to pay them right now would be $484,287. Total balance due after this invoice will be $634,000, which was the total bid price of the road. So this is the first major payment that is due. So the funds from the escrow account that University Park had control of have been released. We have the funds in our possession now, so we can cover this check and make payment. P.T. Farrow will pick up the check once it's approved for payment.
Did we come within budget for the project?
Yeah, actually, the bid amount that was submitted was for exactly $634,000, and then our architects, the architects always like to build in a 10% contingency on the bid package that's submitted. So the total amount approved by the board was $697,000. But none of the contingency was used. It came in right in on budget, so total balance amount due is $634,000.
Okay.
Also, Bob, and this was money that was already in escrow, and was basically put aside already for this project.
Right, the
So we're
amount.
not using any new funds.
No, the amount that we had in escrow was I don't have it on here. Oh, the amount in escrow was 561,000. So this amount of 484,000 is well under the escrow amount that we have. Now, the additional amounts would exceed the 561, but as stated in here, BP is also responsible for a portion of the project. So once they are assigned their portion that they owe, they should be able to pay for an amount that will not cause us to exceed our escrow amount that we have.
Bob?
So, just clarifying, so this is being paid for through BP and funds that were released through University Park. Is that correct?
The original, the 561,000 in escrow was money set aside from construction bonds for when we were originally building the school. And then the portion that will be owed by BP, which is estimated at about 150,000, is in relation to different portions of the project that, for whatever reasons, BP's infrastructure that's in that area, they'll owe for that portion of the project.
And my only question was, do we have any idea why the amount I know in February you talked about it being a sufficient amount, the 560,000.
Right.
Do we have any idea why the costs improved or increased? Even though BP is adding their portion, is there anything
Well,
being specified?
The base bid submitted by PT Faro was for $634,000, and the Healy Bender estimated a contingency amount of 10% to be sufficient to cover all other possible contingency costs related to the project. So the amount approved by the board was $697,000. So the project is now complete, and the total balance due is the original $634,000. None of the contingency was required. There weren't any items that came up that were outside of the scope of the project. So the amount due right now is just the $484,000, and then there's other invoices to come for that haven't been reviewed by our architects or attorneys. The application for payment for the additional items haven't been submitted yet. But the escrow amount of 561 more than covers the 484. And when we originally submitted the bid, we had explained that there was escrow of 561, a total project cost of 634, and that difference should be covered eventually by the amounts that BP should be responsible for, which is estimated at about 150,000 of the total project.
Hey, Bob, not only BP, but what portion, this whole balance, this $600 some odd, is University Park, has they committed to any portion of this? No. Is there
No,
some
the
type
only
of
portion
contract?
that University Park will be responsible for is the amounts covered by the recapture agreement, in which when development starts to be built along that road, they are supposed to pay back the school district for the value of the property that is developed along the road that we're building. So eventually, there's into the future, once the road is fully developed, the entire amount that the district is paying should be paid back to us by University Park. But that could take several years depending on how fast development builds up along the road.
Okay, so now what's the total cost will be 634, but for now 484,000 is due, and that's
Right.
what you're asking to be approved.
Yes.
And if you add the escrow to the BP amount, we're up over 700,000.
Okay.
No, we won't have to pay it all.
Any other comments? If not, will the secretary please call a roll?
For the approval of payment for Wilson Road, Mrs. Sanders?
Nay.
Mr. Brown?
Abstain.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. The motion to approve the payment is passed. The next item on the business agenda is an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Crete and the school district in regards to easements for the water tower. However, I've been asked to pull this from the agenda simply because the lawyers have not completed their work, so we'll take that up at another meeting. The next item on the agenda is the administrative updates, which is the academic report. So, Dr. Rogers, I don't know if you want to do the introductions or
We
everybody else can.
separated the board meeting in September so that we could give a little more time to the academic report, and just doesn't seem to ever work like we want it to work because it's almost 9 o'clock. But right now, we are going to turn it over to Laura Hirsch and Mike Dugan, Chris Potlack. By the way, tonight is Chris's last official act working as a 201U employee, and again, we congratulate her on her new job. And so with no further ado, we're going to turn it over to Laura. And I think you want us to sit in the audience, right?
Everyone
Okay.
can move down to the auditorium floor. Do you want to do it up here? I always hate doing it. I don't know. I'm never comfortable. Chair? No. It's just hard to see, but I want to use my notes. So. We'll just go from here. Does it go far enough? Okay, all right. I don't know where I'm comfortable here. Do you have to take notes on this? Or? Good, good, good. All right, well, first I'd like to start by thanking the administrative team for being here tonight and for Chris coming back from her new post. It's been a long day for us. We started out early this morning with a presenter from Brockton, Massachusetts, and we had an early dismissal day today, which means a lot of planning and professional development in the afternoon, and then our new teacher and our new staff reception, and now we're here. So I'm hoping my coffee holds out for a little while longer here. But I think this is the 5th year Mike and I have done this report together, and I've never quite felt comfortable as to where to position myself for this. But I think this year I'm going to try it from up here. We've tried to standardize this report as we have moved through our time giving the report. And the first thing that we always want to do is start out with the definitions and the kind of the structure of the report. So we're going to go through 6 sections tonight. We're going to start with just the definition of the terms because, you know, we go through a lot of education language and we want to make sure everybody understands it. And then we'll talk about our district and school adequate yearly progress reports. Those are the reports that we get that go along with NCLB. And then Mike will come up and he's going to present our data on our Explore Plan and ACT tests that we give. And then we'll go through an analysis and disaggregation of some data that we have. We have a lot of data that we've collected over the years. And the last section, we're going to really combine this because there are actually 2 academic reports tonight. One is obviously the academic report itself with the data, and then the other part are the school improvement plans, so we've combined that into the presentation. And then the last part of this, which is why Chris is here, she wanted to give us kind of a last word on special education, so we're going to close with that. Okay, definition of terms. Some of the language that we use when we're doing this. First is adequate yearly progress, and we fondly refer to that as AYP, and that is just a percentage of students who have to meet standards on the test. And every year, Illinois has an equal steps system, so every year that percentage goes up by 7.5%, and I'll show you where we're at right now. AYP is calculated not only for all students who are tested, but also for subgroups of students. And a subgroup is a demographic group, and it has to have 45 students who were tested in order to qualify for a subgroup. So if we do not have a subgroup, that simply means that we did not have 45 students that fit into that category who took the test. The third one on the list, which I know it's a little hard to see, is what we call the confidence interval. And this is basically a statistical term that just means as your sample size gets smaller, there's a margin of error with the scoring. And so sometimes you'll see that maybe the percentage of students isn't as high as we thought we needed to get to based on the AYP target, but because the sample size was small, they're kind of giving us, it's kind of the benefit of the doubt, because there could be some error in the scoring and error in the performance. We're talking about kids who take a test on, 2 or 3 days, 4 days in the spring, and, so it's the statistical thing. We kind of like that one because it helps us out sometimes. Safe harbor. Everybody says, well, what if we don't meet the target? So what the government has come up with is this phrase called safe harbor, which is nothing more than a growth measure. And it really just says that once you don't meet, you have the following year, you have to reduce the percentage of students who didn't meet by 10%. So the example we use up here is if we had 60% of our students make AYP and 40% that didn't, the next year that 40% has to be reduced by 10%. 10% of 40 is 4. So the not meets would have to go down to 36%, and the meets group would have to go up to 64%. You would add that 4% to the meets category. Safe harbor targets only apply to subgroups. There is no growth or safe harbor target for an all. So that's for all your students who are tested. This is my annual chart, and you can see for the scores that we're reporting tonight, the 2010-2011 scores, the AYP target was 85%. So 85% of students, all of our students tested, we had to get 85% of the students to meet standards on the test. Subgroups, 85% was the AYP target, but also keep in mind that subgroups have that safe harbor growth target that they can achieve. But the all has to get to 85. For the test that we will take in the spring of 2012, which is this school year, 7.5% takes us up to 92.5%. Excuse me. So for this spring, our AYP target is 92.5%, and then we kind of like to joke around a little bit that we're actually going to get a break because they're going to keep it there for 2 years in a row before they get us to the 100% mark. Okay, so what we get every year in, what is it, like August? August, we get from the State Board of Ed, we get what we call an AYP report. And it's, it's not an easy and a readable report, so we translate it into some charts for you. But before we get to that, what we wanted to do, we thought we wanted to go back 10 years because we've really been keeping track of this now for 10 years. And what this chart shows is the district data combined, all students who have tested in the district over a period of 10 years. We test right now between grades 3 through 8 plus grade 11. It's somewhere around 2,500 students a year. Starting in 02, which is the furthest bar to your left, that's the percent of students who met state standards in 2002, which was at 52%. And you can see in 03, we went up a percent to 53, 04 up to 54, and then 05 we had a 6% increase to 60%. The following year, we went up to 68%, so we had an 8% increase. And then after that point, you can see we've remained relatively stable, a couple of points up and down, percentage points each year. But we wanted to take a look at look at those numbers and then say, well, what was happening in Crete Monee during that time? I'm going to put my glasses on here. The 06-07 year, which was my last year as a building principal in the district, that was the 07 year, which was the 71%. And that was the year that we actually we restructured the spring before, and that was the year that New Monee opened. It was the year that CSK was established and opened its doors. The intermediate center was dissolved, and we sent the 5th graders back to the elementary schools, and we established the 6th grade center. The following year, where it was at 68%, and that was 2008, that was the year that this building actually opened, so the new high school happened. And when you get down to the far bar, that is last year, 70% for 2011. The scores here, if I had to pick a significant thing that happened for the last bar, which is 2011, that would be last year, which was the year that we operated after making $5 million in budget cuts. So I think in terms of the context of what's coming, I want you to keep in mind that we did make $5 million in budget cuts for last academic year. Okay, district data. And I want to thank Nakia because she gave us some tips on how to make this maybe a little easier to read. It's got a lot of numbers on it. What you have here are, along the left side, are the subgroups that we have. The all is the top one, and it's a little cut off. But then we go down and we have our white subgroup, our black subgroup, Hispanic, multiracial, students with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged. In 2010, those were the scores from a year ago, so that's what we reported last fall. And you can see the percentages. The target for that year was 77.5%. The ones that are shaded in red were areas where we did not make AYP. Remember, we're trying to get to 77.5%. The ones shaded in green were the ones where we did make AYP. And then what is immediately to the right of that is the change for 2011. So what you're seeing here are some increases, some decreases. Some are, we're talking percent, 0.2%, a very small amount. And what we did to kind of help you understand the context of it is if we're testing 2,500 students in our all, a change of 0.2% is a difference of about 5 students. Okay, so just to make it a little more real as to how many students we're talking about. So the numbers in parentheses are just the estimate of, okay, with this kind of change, how many students are we talking about? And then the 2011 is what we scored last spring. So, for example, we went up 0.2% in our all group for reading. We are at 69.4 last spring. Our target was 85%. Did we make AYP? No, because the all did not reach 85%. And so that's shaded on the far right. So you can scroll down and you can see that for reading, our multiracial group was the only group that met the AYP target of 85%. You can also see that, that the white group, the black group, and Hispanic group, special ed, and economically disadvantaged all had safe harbor targets. So we had some growth in most of those areas, but it wasn't enough to reach the safe harbor target. Sure. And it's a yes, because that goes back to that margin of error I was talking about. Okay, it's a small sample size, so they're saying, okay, you might not have gotten to 85%, but within a confidence interval, it's safe to say you met the target of 85%. Very small. Okay. The math is at the bottom, and I know that's hard to see. So we had two groups that met AYP, one being the white subgroup and the other, again, being the multiracial group. We did not meet targets for other subgroups, but again, the percentage of change was, a percentage, 1.5 up to about maybe negative, sliding backwards, and 2.9 was the highest amount of growth we got. So any changes that we had were less than 5% either way. So now we do this report for every building. So we're going to kind of walk you through the buildings. And again, I want you to keep in mind the situation last year was our first year with some pretty significant changes regarding budget cuts. The first school, we're going alphabetically. We'll start with Balmoral. Balmoral had some minor increases and decreases in their scores. Again, it was within that 5% range. For the sake of time, I'm not going to walk you through everything, but you can see we've got the percentage of change there. They had two scores that they did meet with AYP, economically disadvantaged in reading and our white subgroup in math, and those were part of that confidence interval where they didn't quite meet the safe harbor target, but was close enough where they felt it was in that margin of error. What I can say about Balmoral was they did add a couple of teachers after the school year started, and both were in tested grades, so, to reduce class size, so that might be something worth considering. Again, we just look at the numbers and then we go, okay, well, can we explain what was going on? The next school I'm going to take you to is Crete Elementary. I want you to keep in mind, Crete Elementary was probably most significantly impacted by the cuts that we made. We basically removed 80 to 90 students from that school. We cut the staff in half, and we took out the AP position. So, it really went through some changes. When you have fewer students, if one student doesn't meet, your score variance is larger. So as we look at this, we tried to keep this in mind. Another thing with elementary that is probably worth considering in terms of, figuring into the equation is when you test at elementary, you're testing third, fourth, and fifth. So then the following year, your thirds become fourths, your fourths become fifths, and your thirds are new. So it's not exactly the same student population, but, you still have some continuity there. I think I did that by accident. The next school, Kim, this is the one I was telling you about, is Monee. Monee didn't really have an impact as far as losing students or losing staff members. And the interesting thing about Monee is in 2010, their African American students, what made them as a school not make AYP was their African American students did not hit the 77.5% mark in math. They were at 70.5. And if you look down the Monee column, especially in reading, I know it's hard to see the math, but 2 of the 4 math scores are positive. They showed improvement across the board. And when you get over to the far right, you can see that the African American students now are meeting in math. But what didn't happen, even though they had over 3% of growth in reading for all students, was that they were at 79.9. Okay, no safe harbor for all. They didn't make AYP because they couldn't get to 85%. Okay, so just so everyone understands kind of the system that we're operating under. Talala. Talala is the partner school of Crete, because when we removed 80 to 90 students from Crete Elementary, we sent them to Talala. So Talala didn't gain staff. Well, I shouldn't say that. They picked up a third grade teacher at the end of the first quarter. So basically, they didn't really gain teachers, but they gained students. So their class size went up, and their dean position was eliminated. They had more students that they were dealing with. Again, some of the numbers went down. They did have an increase in their economically disadvantaged students in math. That did go up, but they got in a significant number of new students that they didn't know, and they had to take those kids, learn about their strengths and weaknesses, and move those kids forward. Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King is the only school that we had this year that made AYP. They have good growth in reading. You can see some double-digit gains. The thing to keep in mind, and I'm not saying this to diminish anything that they've done at the school because they do great work there, but keep in mind this school, in terms of cuts, lost their 7th and 8th grade students. So that was a change for them. They had a couple of slight decreases in math, but again, they're meeting those targets across the board, and so they're making AYP. 6th grade center. We're going to come back to them a little later. I'm going to walk you through this, but we want to come back to them later in the presentation. The thing that always is interesting about the 6th grade center is they never have the same students from one year to the next. So we're judging them on a criteria that they get these students in August, late August, and by the first week of March, they have to have them doing better than the group that walked out of the door in June. So, for them, it's really quite a challenge. And you can see here what I think is most significant is if you're looking at reading at the 6th grade center, you can see they had one area that met AYP in 2010. And they had significant increases over 2010, and they've completely flipped that around. So they had green areas that were, met AYP for all of their subgroups. They got to 78.7, but again, did not make AYP in reading because they couldn't hit the 85% for all. But they had great growth. And in math, they had 3 areas where they had growth, and they did make AYP. They had only one decrease last year, and again, different groups of kids, and that was in the white subgroup for math. Their AYP for all went up slightly, a little over 1%, but again, it wasn't high enough to reach that 85% mark. So they had, they really had great growth from 2010 to 2011. Middle school. Again, middle school, you can see there's a lot of green there, and the thing that, and we discovered this as we're looking through here. They had, look at reading. Reading has all positive change. They did not meet students with disabilities. You can see in 2010 it was red. They had almost 7% growth for last year. They came up just a little bit short of the safe harbor target in reading. And down below here, what you can't see is that for special ed, they had over 10% growth in math. They exceeded the safe harbor target, but they did not make AYP for that group because of attendance. And the thing that we looked at was how far off were they? And they missed the AYP attendance target by 0.2%. So they were, but their gains academically are there. So they, again, they did another great job, and they're at 77.5 in reading and 81.5 in math. And again, it's not 85% for all, so they don't make AYP. Yes. Correct. that was last year was the first year that the CSK 7th and 8th graders attended the middle school. And you can see from here, I don't think you can see at the bottom, but it's exactly, if you looked at just red and green, it's exactly the same from one year to the next as to what is red and what is green. But yes, that would be the difference for the middle school. And I'm going to have Mike come up here because he has a great way of explaining this. I think we're going to have to tag team on this one, but the next one's a high school. And what you're going to see here at the top where it says Crete Monee High School, it says seniors not included. So this is based on comparing 2010 with 2011. We had some, again, slight increases and some slight decreases in both reading and math. We had a large increase in our white students in math. We had less than 5% decrease for our African American students in both reading and math. Special ed had about a 4% decrease in reading. None of those scores were high enough. Anything that had a gain was not high enough to make AYP. So when you look to the far right, everything is color-coded red. This is not based on what we tracked during the school year and our benchmark assessments. This was not what we expected to see. Every piece of data that we had indicated that we would remain relatively the same or a slight increase. So when we saw the scores, of course, we were, immediately we were questioning why this was happening. Now, keep in mind in terms of budget, because I want to keep going back to that, we dropped an instructional period at the high school. We had increased class sizes. And the other change that happened at the high school last year was that we took our division leaders, who are responsible for, the instruction in our content areas, and we split them between the middle school and the high school. So before we had people dedicated to content areas at the high school, and now they split their time 50-50 between the high school and the middle school. So the middle school picked up support while the high school lost some support. So I just want to go back to that, the budget thing. Now here's the change. And I think I'm going to have Mike explain it because I understand it in my head, but I'm not sure I can articulate it well enough at this hour anyway.
There was the state had a rule change. It's been in the paper. I think a couple neighboring districts have been in and out of the paper because of this issue. It's called classification. At the high school level, students are basically moved from year to year depending on the credits that they earn. So if a student is behind in credits or transfers in short of credits, that student might be classified as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, or a senior. In order to be tested for PSAE, you have to be a junior. And so at fall housing, right around October, those students that qualify with the number of credits they're on track for graduation are set as juniors. Now, we have a pretty aggressive credit retrieval program after school, and we also run summer school. We keep a lot of our kids on track for graduation. But we always have a group of we used to call them the hard 50, between 50 and 75 students that are exceptionally behind in credits. Either they transfer to us with credits or they failed credits while they're at the high school. And typically the credits that they're missing is in the math. Students that have failed 1 or 2 years of math. If those in years past, the state allowed the student, if we didn't know if they were going to graduate, would allow the student to take an ACT in order to earn a diploma and not have to take the PSAE. And as I said, we average between 50 and 75 students every single year. There was conversation about this because under NCLB, all students have to be tested, and an agreement was made with the state that all students would be tested. It is up to the district to determine who is a junior, but nobody will be granted a diploma unless they've taken the PSAE. So at October of every year, we have to decide, is this student going to graduate? And we have to make that determination. If they're going to graduate, we definitely want to test them because they have to earn their diploma. Some of these students might only have 5 or 6 credits, and we need 22 in order to be able to graduate. And again, it's that 50 to 75 number. We err on the side of, listen, let's test them just in case they can pull that off. And they're gaining credits through American School and other avenues besides our credit retrieval. And I can tell you, our students are highly motivated in their third year. Though they might not have made up credits in their freshman year after failing credits or sophomore year, they become highly motivated when they think they're not going to graduate. And so they'll pull many credits at the time. So the AYP report is going to be different this year in that it includes fourth-year students. And we'll be able to see the difference if I'm just going to slide over. So this is including seniors, well, students that graduated. We actually had about 10 students that did not get a diploma. We had them take the PSAE because we weren't sure if they were going to be able to pull it off. All 10 were transfers to our school, and they had exceptional credit loss from their sending school. But we tested them because we were going to be cautious if they did pull it off that we would want to be able to grant them a diploma. Okay, we've had many conversations about this issue in the past, but again, we did test it, and this is going to be the report that's going to be shown. But we did want to show that it's not a fair comparison between 2 years because the 1 year was with juniors and this is with seniors. We had 64 students that fell into this line of students that were counted this year that wouldn't have been counted. And out of the 64, if memory serves me, I think about close to 35 of them were not originally from Crete, Monee. Any questions on the rule change? This is my side anyways, right? All right. You passed data. We take an Explore plan and a practice ACT. We take 3 tests. We take Explore with the 8th grade and with the 9th grade. And 10th grade, we take the plan exam. And in the junior year, we give a practice ACT to our juniors. Those are reports that we're going to go through right now. We have some longevity, some data from years past. This is our 8th grade Explore that's taken in December. Last year, we were very excited because it was the first year that the middle school had actually surpassed national standards in every tested area. For this year, if we take a look at for the composite, which was the overall, we're still above the national average, which is 14.9, slightly below in English. In math, just slightly below. We're above in reading, and we were above in science, in the science area for the 8th grade class that entered. 9th grade, we take this exam in October, and this is a different set of norms, so it's the same test, but it's a different set of norms. There's actually 2 norms that have gone by, so when you see that the national norm goes up to 16.1, it's based on the age of the student and the time of the test. So our freshmen for this year scored a 15.1. That's the group that came out of the middle school that was above the national average. And now they're at the high school, missing some that didn't attend the high school, and also including other new students to the district. This is the highest composite that we've had in 3 years. Also the highest composite we had in English. It's the highest composite that we've had in math. It's the highest composite that we've had in reading. And it's the highest composite that we've had in science in the last 3 years. Our 10th grade is also given on our testing day in October. If we take a look at this, it's been flat for 3 straight years. We take a look at the English, it's basically about the same. For math, we've had thrown a lot of interventions in that area. We see that we have an increase in our math score. We also have somewhat of an increase in our reading. Our overall science showed a slight decline. For grade 11, this is a retired exam that we give our students in preparation for the PSAE. With this, and this is just juniors, if we take a look at it, for the last 4 years, it's one of the high for the composite. We get into English, it's slightly lower, but I can say that portion of the ACT we excel on. We usually have a large growth number, so seeing this at a low number, I expect the PSAE to be much higher. If we take a look at the math, it's one of the higher math scores that we've had, 18.5. That was, and again, that was going along with what Laura was saying, is that the information that we had with this group was that they were performing better than years past. Our reading was 18.1, and if we take a look at the science, was 18.8. So leading out of October from our grade 11 before they took the PSAE, our indication was that we had a pretty strong group. And we've used this test for quite a long period of time. We did have a lot of transfers, and the addition of the seniors was a factor. This is the graduate. The students are still allowed to take ACT. In fact, our seniors will take an ACT all the way up until about January as they're trying to improve their score as they're applying to colleges. what's strong on this, and it's blocked by all the chairs, but just take my word for it. What we're going to have is our composite right now is an 18.5, and that's a 3-year high. So our graduating class from 2011 has a 3-year high in composite of an 18.5. We also have a 3-year high in English, which is 18.4, so that's one of those ones that I said that is easy to improve because of the rules that are applied. We also have the highest score that we've had in 3 years with reading, which is an 18.5. And the last one is science, which is, again is a 3-year high, which is 18.4. So the graduating class of 2011 has really, for the most part across the board, 3-year high scores, though they're blocked by the chairs. For data and disaggregation, I don't know if Laura want to quote on this. What we do in this segment is we really take a look at what are some of the stories behind the data. This was one test, one day, what information do we have behind it. We showcase the school every year. We showcased Crete last year. And unfortunately, some say it's a kiss of death because after you do that, you bring them bad luck. Sixth grade was a nice story. We want to talk about them.
Yeah. It's like being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And then the next year. Anyway, as I said earlier, the 6th grade center is always getting compared, using AYP, and we're looking at different groups of kids. So one afternoon, probably about a month ago, we were working with on some data from the interactive report card, and Marianne and I said, well, let's see if we can, because the interactive report card has so much data, and it really allows you to do a lot with manipulating it. We said, let's see if we can figure out for you how the 5th graders come into your school, where are they at, and how far do you bring them along? So we were able, through the interactive report card, to pull out the 5th grade students from CSK because they don't go to 6th grade center for 6th grade, and we were able to then isolate the 5th graders from the other 4 buildings and calculate their AYP score from the year before. So we went back 3 years. So in 2008, 2009, the 6th graders let me back up. The students that left 5th grade entering for that year left and came into the 6th grade center at 70.7. And for 2008, 2009, the 6th grade center got 6.8% increase in scores with those students. And they walked out at the end of 6th grade at 77.5. In 2009, 2010, they came in at 68.6. They got 2% and left at 70.6. These are reading scores. And then last year, they came in at 68.6. They had 10.1% growth, and they left entering 7th grade at 78.7. So for 3 years in a row, the 6th grade center in reading has taken students and moved them a pretty significant amount. In math, the same thing. They came in 2008, 2009, they came in at 75.4, and when they walked out the door at the end of the year, well, I shouldn't say the end of the year, and when they tested in March, again, 6 months of instruction, they were at 79%. The year after, 09-10, they came in at 70%, and then they tested at 77%. And last year, 10-11, 76.9% was a 5th grade score, and they brought them along 1.4%, and they tested at 78.3. So for 3 years in a row, the 6th grade center has gotten growth from their students in both reading and math. And we'll be showcasing you again next year, right? All right, there.
No. How you doing it?
Period of time you have the kids, how do you get the growth?
My reading teacher is my social, my math teacher is my science teacher, so we can
I think your instructional periods, the 90-minute blocks, is significant. I think also it's one school, one grade. So there is that singular focus on we've got to get them from point A to point B in this amount of time, and it's a close-knit group and it's good instruction, and I think they're doing a great job. So. Yeah, okay. I'll click if you want to walk us through it.
We came up with this chart last year, and really what we want to do is we want to account for every student. We want to take a look at, here's the percentage that we have that meet, and in this group that we have for the group, it could include special ed students, it could include students who are new to the district year one, it could include students who were in the second year of the district, it could be in grade. That's all possible. We really want to get down to no child left behind, figuring out who wasn't meeting, and we want to be able to identify this. And we showed this last year. And when we take a look at our year ones that have only been in the district for year one, this is our special ed population. I did this during the practice. Right. This is our special ed population that's not meeting. And if we take a look at the special ed population across the board, it's a pretty constant number. It's a pretty constant number across the board. And many districts are struggling with special ed population not meeting. But as we take a look at it, it is pretty constant. In fact, pretty much a constant number also on this left-hand side. This is grade 11, and as we know, not going to go very, very long as the chairs are blocking out. This next group that we take a look at is a group that we've talked about for a while, and it's the mobile population for the year ones. Now, the year ones is more significant at the high school, which is here on the end, than necessarily for the middle school, which we've got here in the next column for the 8082. As you go down to the elementary, it's a little bit less of a factor, basically about 5 or 6% for the year one. So students who just entered the district, what part of them are the group that's not meeting? The next group that we have is the year two. So let's take a look at, okay, how about the students that are with us for only 2 years? How many of them are meeting? And again, it's actually a bit larger at the high school. We've got 13 and 15% for reading and for math. So that's pretty significant. But really, if we're taking a look at the other elementaries, it's not over 2 or 3%. Which is, it's an interesting thing that we have to take and investigate. This last group, and I think what we mentioned last year was, I really don't have an identifier from this last group. This last group, we keep marching it down and said, how many are in the district for 3 years? How many have been in the district for 4 years? Generally speaking, as we go across, this is, again, about a 5 to 7% at the elementary, not very significant. But this is basically breaking it down as what are the groups that aren't meeting, and do they have any characteristics beyond a certain demographics that are used for the LP. And we took a look at that. And to me, this upper group, this no identifier group, is the group that not only can be targeted, but we actually get some movement on along with the other groups. And we're going to kind of drill down some information on this. I wanted to revisit the chart that we had. And the chart that we had is actually shown up on the state report card. So if you look at the interaction report card and the EPA profile, this is what they show for us. It's a combined test and sort of reading and math together. Now, at that same period of time that we showed the graph before, we showed that we kind of leveled off, but so did the state. The state also kind of plateaued on stories. And we want to take a look at more about added some stories that was happening in the district at the time, between restructuring, between opening buildings and movements within the buildings. I want to take a look at some of our other basic constant demographics that we've been taking a look at. And one of them is our mobile population. Now, our mobile population, basically for all intents and purposes, the highest is 25.3. And actually, we've done some changes, especially at the high school. Most of the mobility is in the high school. And such as the Monee Education Center and things that we put in place has actually declined our mobility district-wide. The other group is special ed. And again, if you take a look at it, it's one of the lowest special ed populations that we've had. For the last year, it's 17.9. But I did want to take a look at the one that has been climbing, and this is low-income population, which remained pretty constant from 2002 to 2007. In fact, they actually declined in 2007 to 38.9. We've been on a 38.9 in 2007 to 67% in 2011. And I wanted to take a look at that just to see how it has, because if you notice on most of the AYP charts, is that the economic disadvantage has been one of our stronger areas in the AYP reports. And if we run an overlay about performance of the economic disadvantage, we'll see that when actually the low income rate was basically constant, our performance with that group was also constant, but not increasing. In 2007, when we had a decline, we had a higher performance in that population. We had a decline the following year, but basically our academic performance with this group has been increasing every year. The only decrease that we saw was 2011, where we were at 67.6, that was meeting or exceeding, and we're at 66.1, so a slight overall decline. But this is another story over this 10 years of what's going on. Is that the two populations we talk often about is mobility and about the special ed population. For all intents and purposes, has remained pretty constant. But again, the economic disadvantage has been on an increase. One thing with the ACT composite, we do this at times, still trying to find the best chart. We're trying to brainstorm on this one. This is not any better. I'm not happy with it, but we'll still work with it. Every guy basically is counting when the child entered our district. You can't see this without the credit report. What we have on here is the year that they entered. What this is, we basically did a regression, and this line is saying what their ACT composite is. We took this from the grade 11 and just tested on the PSAE. What this is basically stating, all of the students that have been with us since the early childhood, kindergarten, all the way up to grade 3, on the ACT, they score above the state average of 20. Students that enter after grade 3, into grade 4, and whatnot, their ACT composite declines. And the last students that entered in grade 11, their ACT average for a group was about 17.3. So those students that have been with us since kindergarten, all the way up to 3rd grade, are above the state average on their ACT. Students that enter our district afterwards, as a group, their average declines, and it's a pretty steep decline. I want to drill down on that and see what some of the reasons behind that was, taking a look at these groups. And again, each dot is just when they enter the district, and some could be on top of each other. We did something different this year, and what we did is that for the assessment office, we tested, it was to take a little bit off the building, but also to get the information as fully as possible. Typically, when students would enter into new elementary, they have to wait until they were tested in the building, that would happen when students enter the session. We tested them during the summer as they registered, so we get the information as quickly as possible. We sent them to the buildings. The buildings were able to put those students in the intervention immediately. What we're trying to do is those students that need help, again, we're going to identify them quicker and as more efficiently as we possibly can, so that we can get them in the intervention program immediately. Especially at the elementary level, transcripts and information such as I said, we really don't have access to as much over than we did the rest. On this is what we tested this year. So in 3rd grade, we had 28 students. And this, I had to stop doing. There's still students coming in. I actually stepped up through the chart. I stopped. I created the chart last week. We still have students entering. Grade 4, we in 3rd grade, we had 28 students. 54% of them are at grade level. 4th grade, we had 24 students. 42% are at grade level. 5th grade, we had 28 students. 43% are at grade level. 6th grade, 41 students. A very large group. Only 22% of them are at grade level. 7th grade, we had 32 students. 41% are at grade level. 8th grade, 29 students. 35% are at grade level. 9th grade, we're using the e-math that we get in place with our preschools do. We had 65 students that entered. 39% of them are at grade level. 10th grade, we had 23 students. Only 9% of them are at grade level. And actually, grade 11 came in nicely. 66% are at grade level. There's 38 students. To give this any perspective, the new students that we tested, not only kindergarten, 1st through 12th grade, we had 481 students entering the district this summer. The total enrollment is 483. We basically have an elementary building in the district this summer. The same size as Belmont, new students. We tested 348 because the Belmont was bigger. Want to talk about remediation 7, I just stopped. Yeah. 169. group that is just came in the summertime, entering the sixth grade, they average at 5.1. And as we take a look at across the board, that's why we're highlighting the sixth grade center, they have a very large group entering this year, 41 students so far, but that's more, that have some extreme deficits compared to grade level, compared to the classes they're joining. This is for ninth grade as they're entering, so the group that's joining the ninth grade, quite a large group. 13.1, this is, we used an ACT. Basically, they're one ACT score down 1.1. And another story, this is reading. Almost all of these students, practically all of these students, actually went to a reading program, which we've been providing an intervention, but they get trying to plan for this. So if you have this many students that can fill up a reading program and a reading intervention program in high school, we didn't have a whole lot of time with planning. With the math, is one of our more expensive interventions. We did a double hour of math. Almost every one of these students went into the algebra block class, which then with two teachers, a double hour, and it's something that is really tough to project because you don't know the student population is going to be coming up at the door. But for the most part, everybody under 13 is put into the algebra block. These are grade 10. Grade 10's group was a smaller group, but performing much lower than the group that they're joining. The group that they're joining is at 15.1. The new student group is 3 ACT scores behind them on average. And actually, if you take a look at it as an average, some heavy mix.
And these students not this year, but the following year will be included in our AYP if they remain.
And our goal for the ACT is kind of the national average is to increase about 2 ACT scores per year. Even with the 2 years that we have, the 10s will be at 14 and then the 19, and we're having minimum. There's the math for new students at grade 10. And again, all of these are going to count next year for the grade. The group that they're joining is at 15.9.
Everybody got a copy in the board book of our school improvement plans that we do every year on our template, and those will be posted, I believe, probably tomorrow. They'll probably go up on websites. But what we try and do here, instead of walking through every plan, is just kind of give you the overview. And in terms of school improvement, I just wanted to set the stage a little bit because, it's not like every year we reinvent the wheel. We try and think ahead and have a plan for where we're going academically and where the buildings are going. So I just want to give you a little bit of background. I know Dr. Rogers has talked a lot about this in terms of some legislation that's come down that's that's changing how we do business. And the first one up there is this Performance Reform Act of 2010, which is really about teacher evaluation. And it came into existence in January of 2010, and what it basically says is that as we move into the future, we're going to have to start including student growth in academics in principal and teacher evaluation. And it will first start with principals, and in the next 4 to 5 years, teachers will be included in this. And what we've been thinking about is we can't just wait until this happens and then say to people, now this is counting in your evaluation. We have to lay the groundwork for this. So as our work is moving forward, that we're keeping in mind that we have to train our teachers on how to look at data and how to move students forward so that when it really counts for them personally, they're prepared for that. The next thing is this idea of using assessment and assessment data in instruction. And it is part of professional teaching standards, but it's also part of our evaluation tool in the district. That is one of the measures that we have as part of what we do with teachers. You know, teachers are responsible, and we actually have a component in our teacher evaluation tool that is called using assessment and instruction. So teachers are already learning how to get better at that. The data piece, for the last 3 years, we've been, coming up, we have a lot of data. We have a data warehouse where we store all of our student assessment data that allows teachers and principals to go in and take a look at it and do some analysis. We give benchmark assessments at grade levels 3 times a year. We look at that data on an ongoing basis. We have our state assessment data, and as I mentioned to you before, we also have that interactive report card that allows us to look at data, manipulate it, and really drill down and see what areas we need to work on. So the thing for this that we went into last spring with, once we started looking at how are we going to get people focused on data and get people, get them proficient at using data, we decided that what we needed to do was to start some professional development. So in June, we brought our administrators together at our administrative retreat and had each administrator bring staff from the schools to the retreat where we did some training on data-driven decision-making. And we talked about how, look at your data, how to use your data, how do you develop assessments between those benchmark assessments that allow you to know how kids are going to perform, or better know how kids are going to perform when they get to those high-stakes tests. So leading up to our school improvement plans, that was kind of setting the stage for that. We came into the year really wanting to set a focus around student growth. So we pretty much had this, a motto. So a year of instruction. If you're here for a year, you should grow a year academically. And Mike and I went around the district at the beginning of the year. We met with all of our different buildings and different grade levels, talking about what the focus would be for this year. So the motto is a year of growth for a year of instruction. At the elementary levels with our STEP assessment, that's 3 step levels. We talk about at the high school with EPAS, it's 2 points of growth per year. So everybody's got their benchmark that they're targeting for. And then the next thing that we put into place was this idea of decision-making for results, which was the training that we started last year. And it's basically a 6-step process. So every school improvement plan has this 6-step process built into it. And it really is about analyzing the student data that we have, identifying those areas where students are weak, setting goals for improvement, which we call SMART goals, which just means that the goals are specific, they're measurable, you can reach them, they're attainable, they're results-oriented, and they're within a time frame. So we're talking about now, let's set those goals. We have the big goals in the school improvement plan, and we have to do those big goals. That's what the state requires. So our goals for next year are to get to 92.5%. But we have to know where we're going along the way. So we set periodic SMART goals so that we can mark progress along the way to achieving a larger goal, which is what we have to put in, which is the state goal. Once we have those goals, we have to select those strategies to address those areas we've identified. We have to develop those assessments in between those benchmarks so we can measure our progress. And then the process starts over. We do those formative assessments, we analyze the data, we modify instruction, we review, we reteach, and the process just continues. So when you look at the individual school improvement plans, you will see the 6-step process built into their plans. The other thing that we are focusing on this year is providing specific feedback to students on learning, so not just a grade. let's conference with students. Let's give students experience where they're getting immediate feedback on what they know and what they don't know. Let's give them opportunities to look at their own data so that they can, again, know whether or not they're making progress as they should. At the elementary level, you'll see in the plans that we're really focused on these data folders. We want students to keep data folders for math so they're tracking their progress around what they are learning. The other big thing that's in here, and we started this last year with our classroom walkthroughs, is really making sure that the professional development that we've done in this district is being implemented in classrooms. And it's observable. What are those things that everybody should see when they walk into a classroom? And then the last piece is making sure that the time that we have where teachers can collaborate, because we know that the power of collaboration is important to making anything work. Teachers have to have time to do the work, but let's make sure we're making the best use possible of that time. And the time focusing around those 6 steps that I told you about with the data. We've got school improvement teams that can analyze data. We're using faculty, department, course teams, grade level meetings focused around the 6-step data process. And then finally, with our teacher evaluation process, we have teachers from year 4 on who annually do, or biannually, do professional growth plans. So the idea is, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's not spread ourselves too thin, let's make sure that those professional growth plans are focused on what we're focused on, not something extra. So let's build in this whole data thing into our professional growth plan, so as teachers are doing the work, it's part of their plan. So kind of working smarter. So all the plans have this built in, and then all the buildings have individual reading things that are built in. And, again, I didn't want to go through 8 plans with you tonight. I want, we summarize. So basically what you're going to see are things like improving our reading intervention services. Mike talked a lot about Read 180. We just did a major upgrade of the program because the new program is more aligned with Common Core standards. So we want to see more growth out of that program. The Monee Madness, I believe Monee was here at the end of the year. They talked about their independent reading program. We now have that program in every elementary school in our 6th grade center for this year. Going back to delivery of literacy instruction, we've done training on literacy. We have certain things that each staff member has been trained on, and for our new staff members, they will be trained on that as well. But are you delivering the literacy instruction that we have trained you to deliver? We have strategy instruction built in around comprehension and vocabulary. You'll see that. A big focus is let's get kids reading. Kids need to have time in text, and as you probably learned from the Common Core presentation we had in the spring, we need a greater focus on nonfiction reading. We want to increase reading and writing connections because writing impacts reading performance. We want to make sure that our teachers are asking high-level questions. We've done training on that. And we want to look at what are we asking students to do. Is the task that a student has to do aligned with the level of the learning standard that the state has? If they're asking kids to evaluate something, are those assignments asking them to evaluate something? So we're teaching kids to do the types of things that they're going to be tested on. This year we're also focusing our professional development, again, on literacy. We've got a plan for our secondary people for the first part of the year, focused on, again, professional development on literacy instruction across all areas. And then, of course, we have to start getting our staff up to speed on the Common Core. So that'll be built into it. And what you can't see down here is we purchased a new reading series for our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. We have an implementation plan for this year. They had training this morning. It was our 2nd session on that. And they are beginning implementation this year. The series is aligned with Common Core. It has a lot of reading, writing, higher level questions in it. And so that is being implemented this year, and it will be, as we have training throughout the year for them as they're implementing, so they're getting support throughout the year, and then next year when they're ready to go solo, they'll be prepared. And then the last thing that's down there that I can barely read is test prep. We do that every year. High school has their Excel Edge course. They're incorporating test types of questions into their classroom. At the other levels, they're using Study Island, which is an ISAT preparation program. So we have that built in as well. And then for math, we are implementing the Common Core Math Standards at kindergarten, first, and second grade. We've made some adjustments. We did some training this summer. Teachers were comfortable starting to focus on those standards because they are a little bit different, and we're going forward with that. We'll be training throughout the year on that. At the high school level, our focus is Algebra 1. We know that that is the most important class that our freshmen take, and we want to make sure that they're learning what they need to learn and that they're having a successful experience. So the ACT Quality Core is really a test bank. It provides us with a lot of good quality ACT questions around algebra, and then at the end of the year we can give them the ACT Quality Core end of course assessment, and then we'll get the data back on how they do. Professional development for math, really the focus is Common Core. The new Common Core not only has standards, but it has 8 instructional practices that really is the how of teaching math with the new standards, and we're going to focus on that with our teachers across the board. So we want them to be able not only to teach the standards, but teach them correctly. And then for Algebra 1, we are doing a lesson study with the Algebra 1 teachers, and basically what this means is they develop a lesson, everybody has input to it. They go into a classroom, one teacher teaches it, then everybody else observes, and then they come back, they debrief, they talk about what went well, what needs to be changed, how does this group of students respond to it, how did another group of students respond to it, and then they redevelop the lesson using the feedback that they get, and then somebody else goes in and teaches the same lesson a couple of periods later, and they all watch again. So the idea is to build successful lessons that are engaging students. Another thing that Mike talked about, the algebra intervention, the algebra block class, which is a double period course. This year we've really put some resources into that classroom. It used to be 2 periods back to back, but one period would be in a computer lab, the other one would be in the classroom with the teacher. And what we did this year is we were able to get laptops to put in those classrooms. So now we don't have the 5-minute passing period in between. We have the ability to deliver direct instruction, followed by small group instruction with students working with one of 2 teachers or a teacher and an aide, being on the computer, more like a center-based thing, and making use of the entire 100 minutes that we have, as opposed to, changing locations and having kids out in the hallway. We're really excited about this, and we're looking forward to some improved results there. Although our algebra block course has been getting us some pretty significant growth. The other thing that you'll see in there, obviously, is the use of technology. We've made an investment in technology where we've got smart boards in all of our 612 classrooms. Teachers are focused on using hands-on experience with manipulatives, calculators, software. That's a big push for mathematics. This year we'll also be selecting a new math series for grades 6, 7, and 8, so that by the end of the year they'll have a new reading series and a new math series. The math series, again, we're looking at things that are focused on Common Core standards because we want to buy something that's going to take us into the future. We started this last year, and we've got it narrowed down to 3 that we're looking at, and we'll be making a selection sometime during the year and getting teachers up and started on that in the spring so they're prepared as they come into fall of next year. And again, the test prep strategies are there for math as well as reading. Study Island is both reading and math. Excel Edge covers everything, and individual classrooms are doing test prep. So those are basically the highlights of the school improvement plans. What I wanted to let the board know, if you recall, last year, because of scores, we had to do state school improvement plans, which were the larger documents that were about 50 or 60 pages. Last year, we brought you the plan for Balmoral, for the high school, for the middle school, and for Crete Elementary. And we also brought you the district improvement plan. This year, we will be bringing you state plans for the 6th grade center, Monee, and Talala. Those will be at the November board meeting. The schools are already working on them. And then I added down here, which I think I'm not sure you can see, but next month at the October board meeting, as a result of our meeting on Monday with our district group around the focus monitoring visit that we had last spring, we're going to be bringing you a revision to the district improvement plan that has to do with a special ed goal. So that'll be next month. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chris for her summary for us.
Okay. Last year, just about this time, the district received a notification from the state that we were selected for what is called a focus monitoring visit. And the process really is, first and foremost, a focus on where our students are being educated, those kids who have individualized education plans to meet their special education needs. The first slide really shows the overall total in the district, our students with IEPs, and what that percentage looks like. And as you can see, over the course of the last 4 years, we have had some steady decline in our students with IEPs. What I can say about that is we certainly do have many students move into the district with IEPs. More so than ever move out on an annual basis. So the decline in the percentage with IEPs really is the result of some good programs that we have across the district, the opportunity that we have to declassify kids throughout the course of a school year. And then I think what's critical in those numbers is the reduction in initial evaluations as the result of a good response to intervention program. So we're able to do a lot of early intervening, especially at the primary level, so that we are not doing nearly as many initial evaluations as we used to in years past. So that 17.9% of the students in the district with IEPs, or individualized education plans, is the lowest number we've had in the 16 years I've been here. So that was really thrilling to see. Compared to other unit districts, we're still a little bit high. But I think a lot of that has to do with our mobility. We have group homes in the district, and we do have a lot of specialized foster care homes in the district, so we have a number of kids that move in on an annual basis that go into those homes with special education needs. Okay. When a district is selected for a focus monitoring visit, it is because the number of students that are being educated in the least restrictive environment, which is the general education setting, is below what the target is for the state. And the codes up there is what my office lives and breathes by. We look at those numbers regularly. Our hope is that we can get more kids into the general education setting with their services being pushed in more and more, which is the reason why we had adopted a co-taught model back 6 years ago and have gradually increased that co-taught model. So unfortunately, what you can see what happened in 2009-10 is we had a significant dip, and that's what shot up all of the red flags at the state, which is why we were selected for a focus monitoring. So the thing that was nice about last year is because we knew early in the year that we were selected, we were able to do some systemic changes within the program. And these are not posted yet. The state profiles are not up yet. These are unofficial. Well, they're official now, but they're non-published. We were able to, with those changes, make a nice increase within the least restrictive environment back to that 42.3%. But the state target really is 49.9%. This slide really shows a differential by each grade. And what's important about this, as you can see, the younger the kids are, the more we can keep them in the general education environment for the majority of their day. But what happens is the older the kids get, especially when they get into the high school, and the focus is on earning their credits so that they can graduate and they're not successful in the general education programs, we tend to remove them from the gen ed setting, put them into an instructional setting where they're more successful. The class sizes are smaller. And unfortunately, that really hurts us. And I know you can't see this, but when the kids get up to grades 11 and 12, we go from only 20% in the least restrictive environment to 42.5 to 43.5. On top of that, we tend to have more kids at our upper levels that end up being removed from the high school environment altogether, and they end up in more restrictive settings. So at the upper level, we're really struggling with that. Last year we had co-taught classes in both freshman and sophomore level courses. This year we added some junior courses. So the hope is that those percentages in the least restrictive environment will continue to increase as we continue to expand those co-taught models. So what do we do about that? Well, during the course of last year, I did a number of trainings across the district at each building level, and I talked to each building team of teachers, not just special ed, but really the focus is on gen ed. And how do we help the gen ed teachers be more prepared to work with the kids that have IEP needs in their classroom? And that is the focus of the state. It's the focus of the Office of Special Education Programs in Washington, is really how do we help the gen ed teachers so they feel better equipped and prepared to work with the kids with disabilities. And so we did a lot of work last year with them. We had the focus visit, came in April. We got a report right at the end of the school year. They did have some findings that they imposed on the district, and one was that, the most significant one was that we were placing kids in more restrictive environments for things other than their actual disability or their actual educational needs. Part of that really was that they felt that the gen ed teachers, even in the gen ed teachers report, they didn't feel well enough prepared to work with the kids. So we have focused, I've talked to Laura, and we had a district improvement plan meeting on Monday night, and that was really the focus of the meeting, was to talk about what professional development do we need for our staff so that they can be better prepared, and what do we need to do with our kids so that they can be more successful. And so the process now really continues on. It doesn't end with them coming on site. They'll be back again in March, and they'll pull some more IEPs, and they'll take a look at how the paperwork is being completed, making sure that we're documenting all of the data that results in our decision for placement. And then they'll come back again in March in 2013, and they'll check that data again, and they'll check the paperwork again. And if they found that the district has met all those compliance indicators, they'll leave us alone, and they'll determine that we've met all of our compliance indicators and the case is closed. If the district hasn't met that 47.8 target of students in the least restrictive environment, they will just keep the process open and continue to work with the district to get to that target goal. But we're still working with Project Choices, which is a task force through the Illinois State Board of Education, and their focus is on the least restrictive environment. So they'll continue to provide coaching and training to the staff so that they can continue to be more successful in meeting our kids' needs. So that was really it. I have to say that I was thrilled to see some of the nice gains that we had made. The one thing I will say about the 6th grade center, they are the longest running co-taught school. So, you know, it does speak volumes to staying the course, having the consistent team there. There hasn't been a lot of turnover in that special education team. They know what they're doing. They know how to differentiate. They know how to modify, and they know how to meet the kids' needs. And it's certainly showing in the progress that the kids are making. The middle school as well. So those are the 3 grade levels that have been co-teaching the longest. I know, unfortunately, a lot of districts, that's the first thing they cut is that co-taught model. What I would encourage you and tell you is that if you do that, and that least restrictive environment number goes down again because the kids get put back into self-contained rooms, the district will come back out again. And unfortunately, that's what's happening to districts, is they're feeling a financial crunch. And so that's the easiest place to cut and say, well, we can't afford to do co-teaching anymore. And they say, well, put them back into self-contained rooms. And it's not serving the districts well because those numbers decline again. So I think that was my last slide, was it not? That's all I had to offer.
So I guess at this point, we'll take any questions you have or comments. Okay, all right. Yeah, Nakia, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think, what I took away from this, because, being involved at this, what we're doing at every level here, as John said, I think we've been laying the groundwork for this for 2 or 3 years, and we're getting better around it, and we're making more demands on people. I mean, what I saw at the beginning of the year as we went from building to building with the message, and then how the principals were following it up with what the demands are on teachers, it's definitely coming, but I think the missing piece, and we discussed this earlier today, was the fact that teachers have to understand that they are the ones that make the difference. And I think the message today, really for them, was that they have to do the work. I mean, it comes down to them. And so your point about striking when the iron is hot, I think we've sent the message now loud and clear that they have to be part of this process, and that the work that they do is important, and that what we're asking them to do is not unreasonable, because it is very, it may differ in little ways, but it's very similar to what she described, getting narrow the focus, getting tight on the work, and we just have to, you have to have buy-in in some way, and I think that now we've sent that message. Well, just based on the answer that Mary Ann gave earlier, I think her point was that they are using their time around curriculum development, around looking at data, around instructional practices, obviously very broad categories, but that kind of thing is going on at every building in the district. So but the issue or the question is, what is the quality of that work? So everybody can say, I'm doing data analysis, we're looking at our curriculum, we're mapping our curriculum, we're looking at our instructional practices, but the question is the quality there, and is it being successful? And I think in terms of where we're at, obviously some schools are further along in that process than others. And for her, she's dealing with one grade level curriculum, which is the point we were trying to make before, is that, when you go to middle school, obviously there's a 7th grade curriculum, there's an 8th grade curriculum. When you get to the high school, you've got multiple curriculums. K-5, obviously, they have 6 years of curriculum. So because the school is a single grade school, and it's one grade level curriculum, and it's that narrow focus, I think that in some ways is an advantage to them. If that answers.
All right, we're going to get going here. Very briefly, I'd just like to thank everybody that had a part in the presentations. I know it's a huge amount of data to decipher and present and all of that good stuff, but it's well worth it, well appreciated, and we'll use that to drive the car a little bit as far as where we're going. So thank you very much. On the agenda, we have old business. Anybody got any old business? No old business? Any new business? We've already covered what's on the agenda, which was the early college thing, but
I got one announcement under new business. I would like any board member who's interested to write this down, and I'll put it in the FYI this week also. Bob and I, because I was very serious about a day where any board member who would like to come in, it would have to be a Saturday. That's the only day that we could think, unless people are going to take off, which I didn't want you to have to do that, to come in, and we would go over the budget again, but this time down to the penny as to what we spend, and that is going to take a whole day. So we did pick one date that you want us to, that we would like for you to consider. It would be October the 22nd. I believe that's a Saturday. If you can't do it, if we hear responses from people who can't, then we'll have to consider another date. But that was, Bob has a family, I do too, and we're just trying to figure out when could we want to both be there. So October the 22nd. If that doesn't work, because I know there was 2 board members who definitely said they would be willing to come. I think maybe even our president might be willing to come. If it gets beyond 2, we'll have to post it as a meeting. But like I said, I will put it in the FYI. I'll give you some information. We're thinking that it would be from 9 to 3, where we would provide a lunch too. So 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, and by then you should walk out with a thorough understanding down to the pencil of what we spend. And we're not trying to do this to be funny. We're trying to do it to be for real about people knowing and understanding all the details behind the numbers, and for you to question and ask as many questions as you want to, because we're willing to spend the time to listen to all the questions and answer them. And we will be thoroughly prepared, thoroughly. We'll have every binder, every chart paper, everything we need to assist anyone who wants to go through that exercise. So we'll give you information how to respond and all of that, and if you're interested, and hopefully that'll work for you, October 22nd is the date.
okay.
All right. From 9 to 3. And we'll provide lunch.
That's new business. Anybody else have new business? If not, we're going to adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Coletti, second by Mr. Heisel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, no. Abstentions, none. We're adjourned.